Imagine being a 28-year-old artist stranded in the expansive, untouched forests of Western Ireland. Seeking shelter, she unwittingly finds herself trapped alongside three strangers. But their predicament takes a terrifying turn as they discover they are being stalked by mysterious creatures every night. A man dashes through a dim woodland in Ireland, visibly scared despite frequently encountering signs marked "Point of No Return," with varying numbers indicating directions or distances. However, he fails to break free as darkness swiftly engulfs the area. Above, a flock of birds flies past, and he tumbles into a pit. Moments later, an unseen force seizes him and pulls him away. Elsewhere in the country resides Mina, an artist employed at a pet shop. One day, her boss requests her to deliver a rare parrot to a zoo in a nearby city, and she agrees. Taking the bird home overnight, she shares with it that her mother passed away 15 years ago. Unexpectedly, the parrot begins to react. That evening, Mina dons a wig and visits a bar, introducing herself under a fictitious name and claiming to be a ballerina. The next morning, she apologizes to the parrot for her behavior, unsure if her true self would be accepted. Eventually, they embark on their journey. Along the way, Mina's sister Lucy calls, reminding her of the family and nieces eagerly awaiting her return. Mina continues driving and eventually finds herself on a road leading into an ancient, dark forest. Unexpectedly, the car suddenly malfunctions and stops, while the connection mysteriously cuts off, taking the parrot's cage with it. Mina steps onto the road to seek assistance, but the forest appears dark and deserted. Upon returning to where she left the car, she finds the road empty. Mina continues to walk through the quickly darkening area, conversing with the bird to keep her spirits up and suggesting they name it Darwin. Suddenly, she notices a woman sprinting past and decides to follow her. Mina catches up near a small forest cabin, where the woman hurriedly opens the door and instructs her to come inside quickly if she values her life. Mina rushes into the cabin. The elderly woman, Meline, has been residing there for some time with two other young individuals, Carrara and Daniel. Since the watchers are unable to enter the building, they must watch from the outside every night after sunset, thus she gives Mina the command to stand in front of a mirror right away. Standing close to the mirror, Mina announces that she plans to leave, despite the others' assurances that it is impossible, and she heads into the forest. Meline catches up with her and explains that the forest causes hallucinations but that it is possible to survive here thanks to the signs scattered throughout the forest. Mina hears sounds like applause suddenly, which Meline confirms her suspicions. Mark the area where someone can get to the cabin before dusk, but remember that once they cross that line, there is no turning around. The professor, who created them, is no longer known to anybody. That evening, Daniel performs for the watchers, introducing them to the newcomer, but they expect her to act normally. In the meantime, Sierra switches on the music and starts dancing, just like she does every evening. In contrast, Mina discovers CDs containing recordings of Love Search TV broadcasts. The following morning, she and Sierra head to harvest therapeutic herbs after her husband, who has vanished, asked the girl to look for Daniel. The guy then left to look for a way out and vanished. According to CR, the watchers spend the daytime hours in these unusual burrows that they just discovered strewn over the forest. She thinks she has been in the cabin for almost 5 months, but after Meline announces the safety rules: never leave at night, never open the doors for anyone, and always try to stay in the light, her strange life starts with completely identical days. Mina watches a ton of shows and frequently stands staring into the mirror. One day, she knocks on the door, and right away, Meline tells everyone to freeze, which stops everything. The following day, she goes hunting with Daniel, and the boy informs her that Meline used to work at the university. Despite her perception, she has been in the cabin for the longest. Daniel had been secluded in the cabin for 8 months without encountering anyone. After listening to the boy, Mina convinces Daniel to aid her in exploring a tunnel using a rope. Mina descends, investigates, and discovers antiquated items, newspapers, toys, electronic components, and an ancient bicycle, which she secures to the rope and sends upward. However, eerie noises, akin to those heard outside the cabin at night, reverberate from the darkness. Startled, Mina screams, and the rope drops at her feet. Climbing back into daylight, Mina departs the perilous place, and they calmly examine the items. With the bicycle, escape seems plausible, but Meline reacts strangely. Meanwhile, Daniel manages to construct a surveillance system from the discovered electronics, placing the camera by the door. At night, Things proceed as usual. Sierra dances when there's a knock on the door. Daniel suggests someone has arrived, but Meline forbids opening it. They hear Sierra's husband's voice. Sierra attempts to verify his identity by asking about their shared book, but he remains silent. He pleads for rescue from an unseen threat. Sierra requests he look at the camera, but as he leans in, something pulls him into the forest. Immediately, a forceful knock reverberates on the mirror, stronger than ever before. Meline positions herself in front of the others as if shielding them, and the knocking abruptly ceases. Come morning, Meline hurls the bicycle into the burrow, demanding an end to rule breaking. Later, Mina reminisces about her sister and mother inviting the girls on a car ride during beautiful weather. Ignoring her mother's request to close the window due to bothersome wind, Mina recalls the tragic distraction that ensued, for which she still harbors guilt. Winter soon arrived, bringing shorter days, colder nights, and dwindling food supplies. Quarrels erupted among the cabin's inhabitants. One day, Sierra ventured into the forest. Mina caught up with her, where Sierra confessed her belief that John was real. Running back to the cabin, Daniel's screams pierced the air. Frustrated with Meline and Mina's refusal to admit them, the women hid under a tree. Soon, lanky, spider-like monsters emerged from the forest, emitting terrible shrieks as they approached the cabin window. The watchers fixated on Daniel and the car while Mina and Meline waited for them to depart so they could return safely. Once they left, the women rushed to the door, begging to be let in. Daniel initially refused, but Mina confessed her lifelong guilt over her mother's death, imploring him to understand. Moved by her plea, Daniel opened the door. Immediately, all four stood before the mirror, hoping to convince the watchers of their presence. Meline confessed she had tried to shield them from certain truths, having taught history and mythology and coming here voluntarily. Only now did she realize the danger of this place. Once, she had ventured alone and witnessed a sunset, seeing not an exact replica of herself, but a strikingly similar figure. The Watchers, an ancient species known by many names, changelings, winged ones, fairies, studied people to mimic them and never allowed them to leave KNX. Outside, the voices of the cabin's inhabitants and KNX were audible. Daniel then discovered a hatch in the floor that they hadn't known existed. Descending, they found a well-fortified living space stocked with food and equipment. Mina activated an old computer, revealing a video recording showing the face of Professor Rory Kilmartin, whose real name was revealed to be the first to study the Watchers and attempt to uncover their origins. In 1979, the scientist discovered this place, which he named Wonderland. Every evening, the Watchers came to his window, observing him for years. Initially, his colleagues mocked him, disbelieving his stories. He then constructed this bunker, employing men from nearby isolated villages, lonely or with dubious habits, to avoid attracting attention to their disappearances. Each evening, he lured them to dine outdoors, hidden within, witnessing the Watchers' interactions with them. Thus, this bunker was erected through bloodshed. One day, a Watcher appeared before him disguised as a red-haired girl, distinctly different from the others, appearing curious and harmless. This realization sparked his ambition to unlock the fairy's secrets, believing it could lead to conquering death. Against all odds, he managed to capture this unique girl in a cage and began experimenting on communication, striving to establish a bond with her. She would occasionally transform into a fearsome creature with elongated arms, yet seemed to heed his efforts. Over time, she grew closer and more comprehensible to him. However, the professor ultimately felt he had achieved nothing significant and decided to end his life. He left a note by the river with instructions to follow the birds as the only escape route. He entrusted the survivor to destroy all documents found in his university office before joining her for what he anticipated would be his final moments. In their last recording, they witnessed Kilmartin ascending, followed by gunshots, then silence. Realizing it's their final night in the forest, Sierra starts playing music and invites Daniel to dance, but he remains troubled about leaving, citing his dysfunctional family and lack of a place to return to. The girl offers him temporary refuge until they find him a suitable occupation and home, having forged a strong friendship. In the morning, the group embarks on their escape, guided by signs and Mina's parrot, whom she instructed to lead them. They soon arrive at a massive stone disc covering the entrance to a vast tunnel. Meline explains that this is where the last remnants of the ancient fairy race, once friendly with humans, were imprisoned. After centuries, they managed to break free, but their friendship has turned to animosity, bound by magic, necessitating their flight. They trek all day until dusk, without sight of a river or boat. As rain falls, despair sets in until they spot large flocks of birds flying in unison. They chase after them and reach the riverbank. The woman hurries towards a boat when Daniel hears screams behind him and sees JN. He rushes back, believing the man survived, only to discover it's a changeling. The women scream for Daniel to flee, but he fails to hear them and meets his end at the hands of the Watcher, who assumes his form afterward. While Meline, Mina, and Sierra drift down the river, the women awaken in the boat and find themselves back in civilization. They flag down a bus and travel to the city, listening to music, only now fully grasping that it's all over. Later, Mina visits the university where Kilmartin worked, posing as his niece to access his office and fulfill his final request. There, she discovers additional documents, photographs, and a recording where he discusses the existence of half-blood children and the fairies. Mina comes across a stack of photos that greatly surprise her. In the evening, Mina visits CRA's house, presenting a photo of Meline from the professor's belongings, explaining that she was his wife who had passed away years ago. The Meline they lived with in the cabin was a special fairy capable of moving during the day, the very one Kilmartin had captured. Unable to bring himself to harm her, she assumed Mina's form to reintegrate into society. Soon, a car arrives at the house, and the real Sierra steps out, revealing the one Mina has been talking to as a fairy. Realizing her cover is blown, the fairy knocks out Mina and transforms into Daniel. The fairy expresses a desire for fairies to live peacefully like other species but laments being forced to remain underground due to human hostility. Transforming into Kilmartin, the fairy approaches Mina in the house, taking on her appearance and preparing to harm her. However, Mina appeals to the fairy, acknowledging that there may be others like her somewhere, being half-human. She admits that humans unfairly banished the fairies from their world. Softening, the fairy spreads her wings and admits Mina may be correct before flying away. Mina later revives Sierra, and they reunite with her twin sister Lucy, finally forgiving herself for their mother's death. She recounts her experiences, admitting she still sees Meline appearing in various guises. Her niece arrives, showing Mina a drawing of her and Darwin, still kept as a pet. Meanwhile, outside, a red-haired girl appears, peering into their apartment window and assuming different forms, perhaps resembling more of a scary bedtime story than a horror film. The narrative builds gradually and tastefully, culminating in a somewhat mundane yet mysterious conclusion. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more such content, and do comments, and let me know what kind of movies you want me to recap.